Okay, so this is just going to be a quick video addressing a comment that was made on my most recent Tulsi Gabbard video. Now, I want to go on the record for saying, first and foremost, I don't want this to come across as an attack. I ask for comments on my videos. However, I think it's good because this was not a supportive comment. This was a criticism comment and a rebuttal. And this is the sort of thing that needs to happen. You need to have an exchange of ideas. So I'm making this just as a response, not as an attack, but to give the counter argument, because I think the points that this individual raised who left the comment are sentiments that there's probably a lot of people out there in the country who genuinely believe. So I'm going to attempt to answer the questions raised in this comment to the best of my ability. You decide if you think that I've got a convincing argument on this or not. All right, but starting first and foremost. Now, the first thing that was mentioned in the comment was about Tulsi Gabbard's stand on actual Medicare for all. So, Tulsi Gabbard has been saying she supports Medicare for all. I'm not exactly sure just how old this information is, where she basically gave her definition of what she supports and calls Medicare for all, but it is not the same as Bernie's, apparently. I just recently found out, actually earlier today, just before I went to work, I was watching some videos, and apparently, and I don't like this, she's more along the lines of Pete Buttigieg's idea of Medicare for all. Basically, she is for a program such as like Medicare for all who want it. And of course, I addressed some of the issues with that, obviously, that it really cripples the effectiveness of Medicare for all. So I brought that up. Now, that being said, let's just get into some other examples here, okay? So the comment that this individual left, we'll just go with this first, and then I will get into the response, okay? He said, firstly, Tulsi Gabbard is not a Medicare for all advocate. She offers a private option. Second, if you research something, or if you have research or something saying how Medicare for all saves money, you can point me to a link. I hear chatter all over this, but I am unable to make sense of it. What I see is that A, our healthcare in the USA is currently in private hands, with the exception of county hospital type healthcare. So, the doctors and hospitals, everything is owned by someone else. How do you transfer that? And B, if you only offer Medicare, period, and say everyone must work for government or go out of business, that does not solve the problem of who owns most hospitals, which are the insurance companies. And C, if the insurance companies don't want to or find it financially impossible to keep running on what government pays, what then if they close hospitals? Does government plan to build all new stuff? In my area, a hospital closed, got torn down and turned into a parking garage for a giant casino. If you compare cost based on other models, and most other models have government owning the hospitals and stuff to begin with, the end result of people who are currently offering healthcare now, just currently offering healthcare now and just pulling up tents and leaving, forcing the government to buy land, capital equipment, building new hospitals, and hiring new doctors, etc. So he's got a pretty good point in the fact that the hospitals are owned by a lot of the same people who are involved in the big insurance business. Now, what is his concern that I seem to gather from his comment? Well, the first thing that I picked up on is he's basically saying, what if the government doesn't pay enough for the hospitals to stay in business? Well, you would think that's a valid question, except from where I stand, and if someone has evidence to prove me wrong, by all means do so, there's just certain things that I have noticed about a hospital that don't indicate to me honest treatment that's the least cost but the best effective. I see a lot of things that indicate this. Money, 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 money. Profits, 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 profits. If you're raking in profits, hand over fist, and the government is basically saying, we're only going to pay you this much, that seems to be sort of the same system what we're saying about Big Pharma right now, wanting to price gouge the price of medicine as compared to what it costs in other countries. Basically, what I'm getting at here is the government's going to go to the hospitals and say, no, you're not going to price gouge. We are going to look at your statistics. We're going to look at how much money you make, how much this stuff costs, and we will then pay X for it. You may not make a huge profit margin off of it, but you don't need to because you're dealing with someone's health. You're not selling cars. Okay? I don't think that's a bad thing. And if the hospitals have proper management and are being run correctly, they wouldn't be hemorrhaging money. So as long as the government's paying enough to keep everything afloat, and I do believe that would be the case when you consider the gross profits that a lot of these hospitals are raking in. Now, you hear how much the insurance companies have been raking in profits. But how much have the hospitals been raking in profits? Some of these non-profit hospitals. Well, before I move to that article, let's just remember that it is Kaiser and the hospital system who have donated an awful lot of money to Kamala Harris. And of course, who has accepted more money from them than Kamala Harris? Elizabeth Warren. And who is the most accepting candidate from Kaiser? If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Beto O'Rourke. Okay? So, if these hospitals are just struggling to get by right now, where are they getting money from to start lobbying politicians, funding political campaigns, and whatnot, just like the insurance companies are? If they're in that dire of a strait that they can't afford to take a cut in the payment, where are they getting this money from? So that's first and foremost. So with that being said, let's look at just how much profits the hospitals are raking in. Okay, so here we have an article from Forbes. Okay. Headline: very profitable nonprofit hospitals. But where are the profits going? So let's just read into this. Okay. A study published in the May issue of Health Affairs revealed that in 2013, 7 of the top 10 most profitable hospitals in the United States were non-profit hospitals, with each earning over $163 million in profits from patient care. Notice that did not say combined, it said each earned that much. Hold on a second. Some of you may say, isn't that like saying you are a vegetarian but still eat beef? Well, if you really believe that all non-profit hospitals are equivalent to charity hospitals and lose money, or at best break even, you may be living in a fantasy world. By the way, unicorns, elves, and fairies also don't really exist. Okay? An assistant professor of accounting at Washington and Lee University, and Gerard F. Anderson, Ph.D., a professor of health policy and management at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, conducted the study. Here's their list of the top 10 U.S. hospitals with highest profit from patient care. And of course, we scroll through. You're welcome to look as I'm scrolling here. Some were for-profit, most were non-profit. Okay? The same study did show that the majority of the 3,000 U.S. hospitals that they studied lost money when just considering patient care services. They did not look at potential profits from other activities such as education, licensing, technology, renting space, investments, parking, selling t-shirts and plush toys, and providing wonderful hospital food, Also, losing money does not mean that individuals within the hospital are not making money, since salaries can be considered costs. In Buys and Anderson's study, 59% of the hospitals were nonprofit, 25% for-profit, and 16% public. In a press release, Anderson indicated that the system is broken when nonprofit hospitals are raking in such high profits. The most profitable hospitals should either lower their prices or put those profits into other services within the community. Now, before I read any farther, to the man's argument saying that if we cut what we pay them, it could put hospitals out of business, you would probably look at that to say that some are losing money and say, aha, gotcha. See there? They're losing money. But let's examine just some possibilities for a moment. Why would a hospital be losing money? Because there are still a lot of Americans out there who don't have health care of any shape or form because they can't afford it. It's been a problem before Obamacare. It's been a problem since Obamacare. I haven't had health insurance in the last 3 years. If I were to go to a hospital, they're going to have to take the time and the cost to do what needs to be done to take care of me. They have to do that. They can't just kick me back out if I'm having a heart attack. But I have no health insurance, meaning I can't pay the massive bill right out of pocket that's going to come from this. It's just not going to happen. In which case, who do you think they're going to get more money out of? Me, who doesn't even make $30,000 a year unless I work a lot of overtime? Or the federal government? Because the federal government is going to be funding a program, if they pass Medicare for all, even if they're not paying what the hospitals would like to charge, they're still going to be able to pay. Okay? But me, good freaking luck. Good luck. And then you consider some of the people who have to be moved by helicopter. And we're talking tens of thousands of dollars sometimes in charges just for that. And their insurance won't cover all that. How do you pay for it? It's no wonder they could be losing money. Obviously, people working in these hospitals have pretty decent jobs. I don't think that's disputable. So that's considered in the cost. And they're having to do all these things, which cost money. But the current insurance market, and that's not to say Medicare would cover all of those things either. That's why you'd have to have, if you want certain things to be included, Medicare Advantage to stack on top of it. So we're getting into the weeds of the life or death situations or hospital visits that run a lot of money. Those things could still be sort of similar to where they're at now. The difference is, if everyone who can't get insurance now because they can't afford it was on Medicare, Medicare would still cover somewhat of a percentage that poor people probably couldn't even cover a fraction of what they're willing to cover. So you're saying that the government won't pay enough. I'm saying the government's still going to pay more than the poor guy who had no other choice but to go to the hospital and can't afford the bill he gets. And what are some other factors that contribute to those really high hospital bills? Well, take for example, you could be prescribed multiple medications by your doctor. They put you on that medication. But the second you check into hospital, that pill box that you need at home, you could ask a relative to bring it. You know what the hospital's going to do? They're going to tell you, take that crap, turn right around, and take it back out the door because you won't take a single pill out of that box. They won't let you do it. But does that mean they won't let you take any medicine at all? Oh, hell no. They'll give you every single one of those pills that you would have had in that pill box because you need them. They'll give it to you as long as it wouldn't cause any adverse effects with something else that you're on at the time. They'd give it to you, and then it goes on your bill. Oh, yeah. And I'd wager, matter of fact, I know in certain cases, they charge much more for that pill than you'd ever pay for it at the drugstore. And some of those pills are already well high enough at the drugstore as compared to other countries. So, once again, charging massive amounts for pills because you're insisting people take your pills, even though they could be the exact same pill this guy already has bought from his pharmacy. You won't let him take his own medicine. You're insisting to use more of your own goods, which then he has to pay for, and you're charging him an arm and a leg to use those goods, in which case he might not already be able to afford the rest of the hospital bill. Now you go throw overpriced medicine on top of it too. Jesus Christ, what makes you think he's going to pay that thing? Really? Let's get practical here, people. Use some common sense. If he can't afford the rest of the stuff you've done, why is he going to be able to afford your overpriced pills? So when the hospitals are insisting to do stuff like that, they're running up very high unnecessary bills, and if people can't afford it and can't afford insurance, well, I don't think there's any surprise in the world why they may be losing money. So once again, I don't think you really got much to worry about from a Medicare for All standpoint as far as a hospital losing money in closing, because they're already losing money now, and it's because of crap like that. But on the other hand, you've got a lot of other hospitals who are making a lot of money. A lot of money. And what are they doing with it? Oh, well, they're doing just what Big Pharma does, what the military-industrial complex does, what Big Tobacco does, what a lot of other rich and powerful people do. They don't invest it into their product like they should anyway. And I'm not to say they don't invest something. But the majority of it is put into their pockets, the individuals in charge, and used to lobby politicians. Well, la-dee-da. Isn't that just a great use of resources? So, without even going farther, but I will, continuing here, we need to develop incentives that allow all hospitals to make a fair profit while at the same time keeping prices reasonable. Bingo. What I was just saying, they're price gouging. Okay? By added that some hospitals are obtaining outrageous profits. So they don't sound, to your point that they're owned by insurance companies, yes, and they're using the same business model as the insurance companies, putting profits before people. Therefore, if the government says we're only going to pay you so much, I don't think it's going to put them out of business. They just may not be able to buy that yacht next year. Okay? Now, that being said, the next thing he wanted me to address was how is Medicare for All supposed to save money as compared to the current system. He says he's heard a lot about it, but he hasn't found any evidence, so let's move on to that and let's cover that. Okay, so this next little bit here, let me just move this over to the side and get this out of the way. This next little bit that we got here comes from truthout.org, talking about how Medicare for All would actually cut $5.1 trillion over 10 years as compared to the current system. Now, what I will say right off the bat, if you try to Google, you wanted a link, and other people out there who may be thinking the same thing, you're saying, well, I can't find this evidence. And that's because if you search it in Google, a lot of the first results you're going to get will point you to websites like CNN, MSNBC, other mainstream media outlets. Now, are you going to expect the people who are funded and have sponsors such as Big Pharma to tell you the truth about a program that's going to help the people and take all the profits away from Big Pharma that they're using wastefully? You really think they're going to do that? Well, that would be poor business on their part, considering they're getting all the funding from them. You don't believe me? Just go watch the news, go watch TV in general, and tell me, what channel did you watch where you did not see a commercial about a pill? Get back to me on that one. So reading the article, Burlington, Vermont, okay? Confronting the question most commonly asked of the growing number of Americans who support replacing America's uniquely inefficient and immoral for-profit healthcare system with Medicare for all is, quote, how do we pay for it, end quote. A new paper released Friday by researchers at the Political Economy Research Institute shows that financing a single-payer system would actually be quite simple, given that it would cost significantly less than the status quo. It's easy to pay for something that costs less, according to Robert Pollin, economics professor at the University of Massachusetts, emeritus and lead author of the new analysis, declaring during a panel discussion at the Sanders Institute gathering in Burlington, Vermont, where Pollin unveiled the paper for the first time. According to the 200-page analysis of Senator Bernie Sanders, the Medicare for All Act of 2017, the researchers found that based on 2017 U.S. healthcare expenditure figures, the cumulative savings for the first decade operating under Medicare for All would be $5.1 trillion, which is equal to 2.1% of cumulative GDP without accounting for broader macroeconomic benefits such as increased productivity, greater income, equality, and net job creation through lower operating costs for small and medium-sized businesses. Now you think about that. That means they're not having to work with private insurance companies anymore to provide insurance. Now you may say, well, the taxes go up to pay for it. And that might be true, but it's still going to actually be less than while a lot of people are paying for their private insurance now. They're not having to pay the deductibles they're going to be paying now. And it's also going to come out better for the businesses as well. Okay, but moving forward, the most significant sources of savings from Medicare for All, the researchers found, would come in the areas of pharmaceutical drug costs and administration. Ding, 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 ding. They're going to take the big pharma out and they're going to kneecap them. Okay? They're not going to let them price gouge. So once again, what makes you think that the mainstream media, who are funded by these vultures, are going to tell you the benefits of a system that's not going to let them price gouge you anymore? Okay? In a statement, Pollin said his research makes abundantly clear that the moral imperative of guaranteeing decent health care for all does not at all conflict with the goal of providing cost-effective care. The most fundamental goals of Medicare for All are to significantly improve healthcare outcomes for everyone living in the United States, while also establishing effective cost controls throughout the healthcare system, end quote. Pollin said, quote, these two purposes are both achievable, end quote. As Michael Leidy, a Sanders Institute fellow former director of public policy for National Nurses United, put it during the gathering on Friday, quote, we can really get more and pay less, end quote. The official rollout of Perry analysis came on the heels of a panel discussion of the moral urgency of Medicare for All, particularly during a time when tens of millions of Americans are uninsured and life expectancy is declining and thousands of families are bankrupted by soaring medical costs each year. For example, my nice little doctor's visit, it's not going to bankrupt me, but it was over $200 visit, and I am on a budget where my house payment is $560. It was $140 just for the visit, and then for our medication that I had to get as a result because of the fact that I had a sinus and upper respiratory infection, ended up being over $200. I ended up having to pull money out of my, not very large savings account me and my wife had been building since we bought a house last year. Okay? So, this is just a visit to the Minute Clinic. Screw going to a hospital. I don't even want to imagine what that bill would look like. Okay? That being said, far from being an unaffordable pipe dream, Columbia University professor Jeffrey Sachs, who introduced the panel at the Sanders Institute gathering on Friday, argued that the Perry study shows Medicare for All, quote, offers a proven and wholly workable way forward, end quote. Quote, Medicare for All promises a system that is fairer, more efficient, and vastly less expensive than America's bloated, monopolized, overpriced, and underperforming private health insurance system, end quote. Sachs said, quote, America spends far more on health care and gets far less for its money than any other high-income country, end quote. And yes, we spend twice as much per capita as Canada. And don't tell me because they have less people. I didn't say we spend twice as much, period. I said we spend twice as much per capita. There is a difference, okay? Watch the full discussion, so here's basically the video for it. Now, basically, the way that this all breaks down, because they don't get into an awful lot of detail here about how it's going to save a lot of money. But, okay, at the end of the day, once again, everyone will be able to have some form of insurance, okay? That being said, you would be able to go to a simple doctor's visit without worrying about whether or not you're going to eat, okay? And unfortunately, we still have a form of government health care. But because it's a bad program, Obamacare was not a great program in the first place, contrary to what some people seem to think, that whole system is going to cost more over the next 10 years than Medicare for All. Okay, and I will actually show all this in just a minute because the Koch brothers did their little study, and that actually breaks it down step by step. Okay, but nonetheless, this is the root of it. This system is going to make it so that the people have good coverage, okay, and they're going to eliminate all the profit price gouging of the corrupt, rich, and powerful who have their hands in the pharmaceutical industries, hospitals, whatever you want to say in the healthcare industry. They're not going to allow this unfair price gouging. Okay? Okay, so right here is an article that actually dives a little bit deeper into how much money would actually be cut. And this is an article written right here. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. One night, a few years ago, my partner woke up with delirious with fever, a bright rash, and joint pain so bad he couldn't get out of bed without help. I was scared, mostly for his health, but also for our financial situation, which weighed heavily on me during our 4 a.m. ride to the emergency room. Okay, now I know this just sounds like a pity poor story. I don't want you to think that I'm just reading this to pull sympathy. No, I'm actually going to get the facts. There's facts in this, so bear with us here, okay? As a freelancer, his catastrophic health insurance plan had an outrageously high deductible, and every day he couldn't work was a day he wouldn't get paid. I'd lost my job and my own health insurance earlier that year, and was still piecing together a livelihood from gig to gig. I didn't know what we would do if something went seriously wrong. We left the hospital several hours later after an IV and a couple of ibuprofens and no diagnosis. Even after insurance kicked in, we were billed about $1,000 for the experience. $1,000. Okay? My partner's joints hurt for months afterward, but the already hefty price tag scared him off from following up. So basically, he needed to go back to the doctor, was too afraid of the price, and didn't go back. It turns out he's far from the only one who looked at a bank statement before considering the trip to a doctor. A recent study found that 65 million Americans had a health issue in the last year, and they didn't treat it because they were worried about the cost. And 45% of Americans, including a third of households making more than $180,000 a year, worry that they could go bankrupt over a major health issue, and let me just say, you can count me among that list because I can't afford a trip to the hospital like that, and I know it. Okay? Nearly half of those survey respondents said that they thought U.S. healthcare was either the best or among the best in the world, but our actual health tells another story. By a long shot, the U.S. has the most expensive healthcare system among the 36 mostly high-income countries that make up the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. But for all that money, we rank just 28th in life expectancy and 31st in infant mortality. Okay? Nothing about the system is healthy or caring, but it doesn't have to be this way. In 2014, the same year we worried about a $1,000 trip to the emergency room, our insurance companies spent nearly $20 million on executive compensation. More than $5 million went to the CEO alone. Okay? What if our healthcare system didn't allow people to make these exorbitant profits off our pain? What and who could we save? Okay? By one assessment, a universal single-payer system like Medicare for all could expand coverage to everyone while reducing the cost to American business and people by as much as $310 billion, primarily by cutting down on industry bloat and negotiating fair pharmaceutical prices. While our monstrously expensive healthcare system is maddening, the harm done to people who can't afford to participate in that system is what's truly enraging. Read the stories attached to the third of GoFundMe's specifically devoted to crowdsourcing money for medical costs, and I'm sure you'll feel the same. Thousands of people in the United States die preventable deaths each year simply from lack of insurance. Fortunately, there's a groundswell of support for a publicly funded healthcare system, and researchers say one proposal, the Medicare for All Act of 2019, that's in the front of Congress right now, sets a new standard for universally and equitably guaranteeing health care as a human right in the United States. No one should have to worry about bankruptcy before seeking out the treatment they need. Health care is a human right, and we deserve no less than a system that provides it universally and equitably. Okay? So, that being said, you go to the studies, and there's plenty of them out there. You could cut as much, right there, $310 billion. And again, I reference you to go look at the Koch-funded study. Now, of course, mainstream media has tried to misconstrue that study in many, many, many different ways and say, oh, there's extra cost, and Jake Tapper, I think, was the first to jump on the train to nowhere with that argument. Okay? But they've been doing it. And why? Because who funded the study? The Koch brothers. I don't think that anyone at any point in time have ever accused the Koch brothers of being liberal, progressive, independent. Oh, no, 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 no. They are right-wing to the bone. And the right wing is not exactly a fan of Medicare for all. They like the current system. They like private health insurance, so on and so forth. Okay? That being said, their own studies showed that this system would cost less over the next 10 years. Now, Does that necessarily mean it's going to cost less for the government or for the people? My gathering from this is it's going to save the people money. Not necessarily the government, but the people. However, if the people are saving money, following the theory of Keynesian economics to some degree, and I have argued, in my opinion, I think there's a hole right now in the Keynesian economic theory because of bad trade deals and outsourcing and not many products made in America. My understanding of Keynesian economics, or demand side economics, was that if you put more money backing the working class pocket, they will then recirculate that money by buying American made goods with it. In other words, keeping the businesses afloat, keeping the economy afloat. Everyone's doing well. The American products are being sold. People are buying stuff, except now the stuff's not being made in America. And that's because bad free trade deals have created this outsourcing problem. However, following Keynesian economic theories, if you could get that problem also resolved by giving the American people more money back, they then have more money in their pocket to do things with it, meaning that you could rebuild the middle class, build a much more vibrant society, and while it would cost a lot of money, we probably would run up the debt. That is when it becomes time to make the necessary cuts in other departments. And I am not, Joe Biden, talking about Social Security and Medicare. Those are not the programs you need to cut. Military waste and all this phony capitalism and corporatism, all this crap, DOD contracts, lobbying, all this junk we're wasting money on because of lobbyists lobbying them to waste the money on it. And all this military waste. Keep in mind, the Pentagon has lost basically since its inception close to like $30 trillion or something, which is, or excuse me, it's not like 30 trillion. I think I got that turned around. It was right at like $20 trillion. So pardon me, $20 trillion. And the Medicare for All system, I think, was going to cost like $30 trillion was what some people were arguing or something like that. I think that's where I was getting that number twisted up with. But $20 trillion they have misplaced. That is almost enough to wipe out our entire national debt right now. So, assuming that money had not been wasted or misplaced, had that not happened, then basically we would only need to run up like $10 trillion in debt to cover Medicare for all, and we're over $20 trillion in debt right now, and we're still afloat. Okay, so explain to me again how exactly. At this point we do have a lot of debt. And if paying for it is an issue, it's only an issue because of the greed, corruption, and waste of the powers that be and the status quo that have been running this country into the dirt for so long. However, they have made the arguments where the taxes will be able to pay for it. Now, some say it won't, some say it will. Either way, what is your answer? Complacency? Leaving the current system in place? Because that doesn't help anyone. And it's actually been contributing to a lot of hurt for a lot of people. And here's the thing. We, the people, elected the politicians. They're there to do our bidding. Therefore, they should be putting a system in place that is the most beneficial to the people and allows people to be able to go make simple doctor visits when they need to without worrying about how much it's going to financially task them. And again, I say simple doctor visits. We're not even going to talk about the high costs of an emergency room visit like is being covered right here in this article. So even if it's not Medicare for all, even if someone can give me the argument where Buttigieg or Tulsi Gabbard's idea works better than Medicare for all, from what I've heard and what I've seen, it actually hurts the initial point of Medicare for all, and it wouldn't get the outcome you think because you're still leaving too much power in the hands of those corrupt insurance businesses. Okay? So you're not going to get the desired outcome from it. So I say again, with all that being said, form your own opinion. And again, if the person who made the comment on my last video, if you made it to this point, I do want you to understand that I'm not trying to attack you. I'm not doing this to try to be petty. I'm not doing this to try to have the last word. This is just an exchange back and forth, okay? And you don't have to agree with me by the end of this video. But if not for you, I think there are a lot of other people who have listened to a lot of the fear-mongering about that system, okay? And they are convinced that somehow the current system, chock full of waste and corruption, is somehow going to be a better system. You know, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not like the concept of really big government having too much power. Unfortunately, you have to look at some scenarios and you have to say, who is the lesser of two evils here? The private industry or the federal government? Because both can be some downright dirty SOBs. Period. Both can. Okay, the private sector and the public sector can both be greedy, sneaky, and manipulative. There's no arguing that. I certainly wouldn't argue that fact. But at the same time, there's only one system that seems to do the most for the people. And that is not the current system. And even if it actually runs up the debt, the people will get more money. There's arguments that it can be paid for. It certainly will save the American people a lot of money as compared to what they got right now. And let me put it this way. If the government is indeed to run up debt, would you prefer that they run up debt in the name of unjust wars, unconstitutional wars, bombing of countries? Or, for example, should we run up debt to send American troops to go protect Saudi Arabia? You know, the country who has been directly linked to having people connected to 9/11, the country that kills journalists. We're going to send troops to go protect Saudi Arabia. Would you prefer they run up the American debt to build a military base in Niger? But before they can build that base, they got to build surrounding infrastructure. Okay? Surrounding infrastructure. Meanwhile, we can't take care of the infrastructure here. Flint, Michigan can't get clean drinking water. Our bridges can't be repaired on time. Our highways can't be repaired on time. Everything falls behind schedule. Everything's in shambles. Everything's falling apart. We don't want to invest in public works programs to keep our own infrastructure up. But we'll go build infrastructure in another country to build another military base. Oh, isn't that just wonderful? Doesn't that just warm your heart so much? That we can take care of all these other countries, but not this one. So again, I'll say, your debt's gonna be run up. Okay? Would you rather it be done on something like that if they're gonna run up the debt? Or would you rather it be on things that actually have an end result of helping the American people and you, the taxpayer? Would you rather be concerned with everyone else or be concerned with yourself? See, actually, I think this falls directly into Trump's America's First argument. Except, when he does things like this, he's not exactly putting America first in a lot of ways. Okay? But America first. Okay? Would you mow everyone else's yard and let your own grass grow 5 feet tall? No, you wouldn't. So why do you want to let your taxpayer money be invested into waste and corruption like it is now instead of investing it into things that help the American people? And we've gone through the ways that it would end up helping the American people and saving them money. Even if it doesn't save the government money, the government's going to spend money. The government's been spending money. They certainly don't seem like they're going to stop anytime soon. So which way would you prefer that they spend that money? To help you or to kill other people in other countries, and we'll use your taxpayer money to do it. Oh, and by the way, when we do have to make some cuts, we'll just take it out of your Social Security and your Medicare when you get old enough to get Medicare. We'll cut that, and then we'll cut Social Security that you've been paying taxes on all these years, and you just won't get as much out of it. So basically, you've been paying on a Ponzi scheme all this time. But don't worry. We're going to go promote America around the world and a lot of freedom. We just might kill a lot of people and carry out some unconstitutional wars in the process. But don't worry, it's money well invested.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Independent Report. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like the video. Also, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to ask or topics you'd like us to cover, please drop a comment in the comment box below. And also, please subscribe to the channel. And if you do subscribe, ring that bell so you'll stay up to date when we drop new videos and you'll get notifications of it. And also, please support us on Patreon. Funds are going to be used to grow and improve this channel so we can reach more and more people and spread the message that the mainstream media doesn't want to tell people. We hope you'll tune in next time.